Welcome to Wednesday Q&A, where you all ask the questions and we answer. I am joined by my fearless and wonderful friend, physical therapist and lit senior teacher extraordinaire, Kristen Williams.
Hey, Laura. Every time you say it, we both just kind of
I
giggle.
know, we both smile because it's like I just want to do I want to do all the fanfare that you so
Oh,
deserve.
and it never gets old. I don't know why.
Oh,
That's kind
okay. I hope it doesn't get old for all of you listening.
of.
All right, we have a question coming in from Stuart Breer Rawlings. Can you talk about the loss of thoracic mobility as we age and the loss of balance? I teach seniors and it seems like balance comes and goes. So kind of two parts there, thoracic mobility and balance. You want to start off?
Yeah, he's absolutely right. We do see this with people as they age. I think people, as a rule, we know that people become less active and they become more sedentary. Posture starts to go, gravity starts to take its effect, and that thoracic spine especially gets limited in its mobility. I see it in my parents. I see it in my older patients, where there becomes almost a disconnect, an inability or unawareness of how to move there anymore. And then that can affect balance, I think, because of center of gravity changes. But I think a big thing with balance in the elderly is vision's getting worse. That's going to affect your balance. Sometimes there are sensation losses in the feet if there are other comorbidities, but just a lack, or they're always wearing shoes, a lack of mobility in the feet. So you have like this perfect storm of stuff that's occurring as we age that can affect mobility, center of gravity, feedback from the floor, feedback from our eyes, to affect balance, to affect posture. And then there's a fear factor too of not wanting to fall, so they kind of start shuffling. I've been watching this progression in my own mom, and just this rounded posture, because that tends to make them feel more comfortable reaching out. Unfortunately, that limits the thoracic mobility. And then we also, just as we age, we start losing. Our collagen ages, we lose fluidity in our joints, in our skin, in our tissues. And so things just start to naturally stiffen. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
I agree. We can become more crystallized, right? Like a good crystal. And so, but we are a crystal matrix, a liquid crystal matrix at our essence. So I totally agree what I've seen and have seen in the research as well. And it is all of those things. Posture, all the stuff that you were doing earlier continues and becomes even more brain mapped and more imbalanced. So if you're flexed over, you lose the ability to rotate very well, because you need that neutral spine for sure to be able to rotate around the axis of it. And so you can, you see the little old ladies, or men, they kind of move as a unit. They turn their whole body and they don't have that segregated movement of the individual segments of the spine, which is really necessary. Like, I want to be able to turn and still have my pelvis stays forward instead of turning my whole body. Because when you do that, to Kristen's point, you're also losing some of your proprioception. You're losing some of your being able to control your center while things are happening. Limbs are moving, ribs are moving. And when you move as a big block, you actually really do limit that kind of expressiveness. That's what our limbs are for. They're really to express and to engage us in the world around us. And so I think people get stiffer, they move less, and then they become more likely to fall. And if they fall or lose their balance, they become more scared, so they don't move as much. And it's like this really bad, vicious cycle. And, the studies have shown that one fall will set people back tremendously. And a lot of it is mental, because, of course, they're worried about breaking their bones. Their bones are more fragile and brittle as you get older. And so those fears become very real, and they really become a deterrent. So I think to that point, we continue to work all the stuff we would work on, which is posture, work on thoracic extension and rotation, work on core stability so that we can move our limbs and really reach and stay not so rounded over, because that also helps our proprioception, our feeling of being able to control ourselves in space and not be contracted, literally, not only in our body, but in our movement patterns. So the more we can move in big global ways, functional ways, the better. And, when I work with seniors, I'll say, tell me what your day's like and how your house is set up. I'm always like, and what do? We put them on one floor. Because my goodness, after a while, we don't want to climb stairs. Why don't we want to climb stairs? That's probably one of the greatest things we could do. So what do? We go to a retirement home where it's totally one floor, toilet's elevated, you got rails all around, you get Velcro on your sneakers, you just become like little babies again, like we're baby-proofing the house as we age. And that external environment also influences how we move and how we feel about movement. Like when people say, oh, I don't, my mom lives in a house that has a basement, it has a second floor. She doesn't go on the second floor much. And everyone's like, oh, she really needs to downsize and get it. And I'm like, you know what? Those stairs, like she's climbing up and down those stairs multiple times. She's bringing groceries. She's 79. Those are going to help her. And because those stairs will help her stay strong, and she's going to be less likely to fall down them because she's going to have kept going and kept that strength. So I think there's so many elements. It's a mental, it is really a mental outlook. Like as we age, some things are going to be more challenging, but they don't have to be. Like we don't have to make them like we're just going to sit in our lazy boy that has a motorized, elevation and lift us up, and then shuffle over to the kitchen. And we don't have to do that. But that's why we need to do this stuff now in our younger and middle age years, so that we're setting ourselves up for a nice, graceful transition into our, older part of our life where we're still very active and, still have good posture and stuff.
That's what I was talking with my specialty module mentor group just last night, and I was talking about it's going to be interesting to see long-term studies of what this year and a half, going on 2 years of shutdown-ish. I've seen the change in my mom especially, because we've taken out that social aspect, that going out to dinner and going out and seeing people. So suddenly, to your point, they're in the house all the time. And they're not moving around as much because, for a while you weren't going to the grocery, or my dad would do it, for my mom. So that caging in effect of this shutdown, the pandemic, I think is going to be we're going to see stark changes in that population of just a decline because of not being able to move as well, which is why I'm so thankful for our online platform that has allowed people to still move at home. My mom does online stuff, some of our chair work and whatnot. So, but it's still not the same as getting out and just moving. Movement is medicine. Getting out, moving, being active.
We have to move because it's not only great going and being social and being and staying fit and feeling good in our body, but it helps our immunity, it helps our breathing. Like if those people that are closing off, they're not breathing as well, their immunity is not going to be as great, because if your pulmonary system is affected, it impact, all these systems affect each other. Your digestion, the way you feel, sluggish, and it just one begets the other. So movement, it really is the antidote for all of it. So keep moving, people, please.
All right. I have a question from our friend Deborah Lang. She says, "Hi, Kristen. I have a question about my anterior knee pain during certain yoga poses and streams. I have had a chronic bilateral knee pain for about 3 years now. It has improved a lot with daily lit yoga and resulting postural improvements. I had completely lame glute muscles and I think a slight anterior tilt. I also used to have pain down the lateral side of my left hip and quad and a terribly sore Achilles tendon on the same leg, but both have virtually disappeared. I stand for work and walk or ride my bike to commute. I also walk, road ride, and mountain bike ride for exercise and leisure. Like I said, I have improved a lot, but every once in a while my knees will still have pain anteriorly. I am wondering why I can get this pain when I'm in bent knee down dog and dolphin, and when I'm walking back from plank to down dog or happy squat. I can also feel twingy in plank. Any thoughts? Thank you so much for all you do. Why don't you start with this one? Because I know we've had a similar question about this before.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot. She gave us so much great information, so I don't even really have to see her to know. So, first of all, you gave us your background, that lateral hip pain into your Achilles. That all tells us some stuff that you were probably hanging into that lateral hip and that your glutes, as you said, were not functioning as well. So that's some years of setting up dysfunctional movement or suboptimal movement. But you've gotten a lot of that more organized. It sounds like your glutes are working better. You don't have that lateral seam pain. But now you can sometimes feel it in the anterior knee. You also told me what you're doing is a lot of sagittal plane movement, repetitive, so when you started saying all those things, I'm like, yep. So walking, biking, mountain biking, all that is like a repetitive sagittal plane, meaning like just walking forward and back would be sagittal. So that walking and biking, that isn't to say you can't do that, but what I would say is make sure that you're bringing all of the stuff we teach you in lit into that. So can you lift up in the bowl of the pelvis when you're biking and not kind of sit and let that femur be driven into the knee over and over and over again? So the knee is really there just to move and allow movement to occur. We don't want to be putting pressure in it as you bend the knee. We want it just to be kind of, the femur's just gliding on top of the tibia via the knee. So in those sagittal plane motions, you're more likely to have that drive of the femur into the knee. So be really careful with that. Also check your bike seat. I would say, like, that sounds, we just had another wonderful graduate who had been having knee pain from biking. And we both gave him the advice, like, go and get your seat and checked out, because if it's a little bit low or a little too far back or a little too far, like any small, and I'm talking like it could be a quarter of an inch, because that quarter of an inch can drive into your knee. So I would get your bike checked and make sure, since you are spending a lot of time biking. And then really continue to work on the reset. And if you're feeling things like going into plank, your knee is extended, your hip is extended, and that might be pulling a lot on the front line. And so that you're feeling it in your knee because you haven't yet gotten that ability to have your hip extended, or really holding your pelvis neutral, and not let it go into your knee. Because if you're tight in your front hip, because you're flexing all the time in walking and running, and then you open that up, like you iron it out in plank, but you still have the tightness there, it is always expressed in that anterior knee. So when anybody says in plank my knee hurts, and then especially if they pick up one foot, that they can't get away from it because it's all in that one knee. So I would say in your plank, feel free to lower your knees and work on plank with really paying attention to the position of your pelvis. You're going to almost feel like you're posterior tilting to get it neutral, because my guess is you're probably still in anterior tilt if you're in plank and you're feeling it in your knee. Coming into happy squat, just make sure that you go back more into the glutes and put your fingers in your hip creases and really get that femur going posterior. So it's the absolute opposite. Anterior goes into the knee, posterior gliding goes into the bowl of the pelvis toward your glute muscle. So you'll feel that glute getting stretched. It's getting eccentrically loaded. Those are all movements that with time and with precision will improve and take that out of the anterior knee. So anterior knee pain, it doesn't surprise me that you might feel a little bit of that with all the other kind of positional and postural background, but it sounds like you've changed a lot, and just know that will go away. But to make sure you mix it up. I'm not saying don't mountain bike, but maybe, do a yoga class and then try a shorter mountain biking. Do you have any other thoughts to that?
Yeah. I love everything you said. And then I would also, because of the positions she's having it also in dolphin and like the bent knee down dog, I'm wondering what's happening at her ankles too. Like
Hmm.
does she not have that ankle dorsiflexion? So is it driving more into the knee because of a dysfunction below as well? Because we know about there, she knew she had it up above. So maybe she's gotten that figured out a little better, but to your point, it still might be a slight and almost like the bike when you said it can be a quarter inch. The same thing is true of the pelvis and the ankle. It can be 10 degrees. It can be the littlest change. It can almost be the thought of moving a certain way is all you need to change the feeling in other areas. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. If
Hmm.
you just bring your mind's eye to it, and this 2 degree change can have dramatic effects. So I would take a look at her ankle dorsiflexion. How is she moving there? Her calf tightness, her Achilles. She said she was having Achilles issues.
Mm.
Is she still maybe a little bit limited in her ankles? So look above, look below. And then, yes, to your point, that's a lot of sagittal, which I love it. I love that she walks and rides to work, and that's fabulous. And she's doing lit yoga, which I think has helped. But there might need to be a bit more of a balancing in her activity level.
Hmm. And yeah, when she said the ankle dorsiflexion, that explains the happy squat as well, because you're going way back. And if your heels can't drop down, that calcaneus can't be loaded as the tibia moves back. That's the dorsiflexion. Then the tibia moves forward into the knee, so it's coming from below. So in dolphin or down dog, I would just get way up on the balls of your feet and bend the knees so that you're taking a little bit of that pressure off if you don't have that dorsiflexion. And then you could do the same thing in happy squat that you do, where you put your fingers in your hip creases. You can also put them right around the cuff the ankle and help a little bit of that ankle dorsiflexion. Great question. All right, next one. This is a fun one. I don't even know how to answer it, but we can answer it together. Alia Michaela, how do you go about being a strong boss lady with your employees?
You get to start here, boss lady.
I know. I guess I don't. That's probably it. I always think in life in general, whether it's work, as a mother, as, just trying to be a good human, I think the best thing to do is lead by example and just, surround yourself with people who are doing the same thing. And that's really, that's what I think I do in work, is that I try and lead. I'm not going to ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't, unless they're specifically like Greg knows how to operate a camera in a way I don't, but in terms of work ethic, in terms of, I'm not sitting back eating bonbons on the couch. I work really hard, and I don't like tell people to do that. I just think people I'm also, the people that are in my circle naturally. I'm attracted to ambitious, hardworking people. So I think, and I think they're attracted to me and want to work with me. So I think I haven't had, I haven't really had any issues in the workplace ever where I've had to kind of be like strong boss lady. I'm just who I am, and I also look at it like we're a team. I really don't look at it like I'm a boss, if that makes sense. And I think that again, being a team member is very important. So I'm not asking anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do, and just like with my kids, I try to be empathetic, and yeah, that's how I think I do it.
No, I would agree that is how you do it, and I feel that is true. You have really surrounded yourself with a good team, and so we do feel like a team, and then you do lead by example in that people don't realize how hard you work until they're on the other side on your team. It's shocking how hard you work, and so that inspires us to work hard as well. And on my side of having been a clinic director in many different instances, that empathy, that humility too, the ability to say, you know what, I was wrong here, and let's talk about it. Not always being right, being aware that what you are intending to put out there may not be what's being perceived, and being open to listening, because I can pick up on people's body language. I can pick up on tone really well, and I've never been one to just sweep it under the rug and be like, all right, you and me in the, and that's like, oh shit. I mean, everyone's like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. I'm like, well, yeah, it's hard in that 30-minute conversation, but afterwards, it's like a shell breaking open, and those people end up being my dearest and my homies, because they know, all right, Kristen's got my back. I want to have her back. Mm-hmm. And so I think that being a good leader is being a communicator and being empathetic, and being humble, admitting when you're wrong, asking for the best from someone, and also delivering as best you can to them. People, it's very reciprocal. I mean, the LIT team is hugely reciprocal. And I have found teams that I've led, even my sequencing lab calls, they end up being big collaborations. Like, come on, let's all work together. And, that's you do the same thing on our team. Mm-hmm. There's a symbiosis going on.
Yeah, versus absolutely. And I think it's great to think about it like with any team, whether you're heading it or not, is like, really, like you said, be humble. Like, I recognize what I'm really good at, and then there's many things I'm not. And so I think as a boss, as a leader, you don't have to play a role like you know it all, because then nobody's going to really respect that as much. Because then you have to hold that line, and to be that person all the time means you're not going to admit when you're wrong, means you're not going to admit when you need help, means you're not going to, like, I ask most of the time, I want to know everybody else's opinion, and I trust that so much, versus like having my own vision and being like, it's got to be this way. And then I know, like, when I do have strong opinions and I feel like in my gut, like this is the right thing to do, or choice to make, or amount of money to spend, or whatever it is, I'm comfortable with that. But that most of my decisions it's a team decision, it is truly, I think that's collaboration, and collaboration is powerful. It is potent. That's what doesn't drag down energy. Things that drag down energy is like one person, be it the leader or somebody else on the team, who's always, trying to kind of manhandle things or take credit for things, whatever it is. It's like collaboration, it really feels beautiful, and then it is sustainable, and it's renewable, and it just, like, I feel like we do so much, and we just keep coming to the table with even more energy, which is hard when you're like, we are all most of us are virtual, whether it's the pandemic or not, and yet we still come to the table, and we have, we're always like, what can we do now to be like amazing, So yeah, get good people on your team. That's no matter what team that is in life. Get good people on it. I love that question. That was not a PT question per se. So, all right, I have one more question for us today. So this one has been asked before, but I do think it's relevant because I still think it's so freaking confusing. Miriam Tabraze asks, should our scapulas be neutral or protracted in handstand? And I think that's probably maybe a little, maybe she knows, but I think it's confusing because some people have learned from people in a workshop or their own teachers or on Instagram, like to protract the scapula and then lift into handstand. And that is not the way we teach it, because in most of the entries that we're doing, besides like jumping and piking into it, we are coming from like a standing L position where your scapula are neutral. And that is a very powerful place to, it's literally like just walking onto a cart, that's sitting on the tray of your ribs. And it's not like it's not going to stay on your ribs as you lift up, but to have that anchor from the beginning, because the hardest thing is the lift off, and that the first, I would say 0 to 90 degrees are really the hardest. And that's where you want to feel the security of the scapula. Then once your legs come up, the orientation of your arms is now at above 90 degrees, the shoulder flexion. And so naturally, your scapula, as you're going up, they will naturally follow the rib cage and come into protraction. You don't even really have to think about it, actually, especially when you set them up in that beautiful neutral position to begin with. So once you're actually in a handstand, they are protracted because your shoulders are in full flexion. So personally, I think that people that practice the protraction from the beginning, it takes a lot longer to get a handstand. They don't have as much stability. This is what I've seen. And then I don't know. It's like, it's a weird kind of, you're protracting and you're still not in, you're still below the above 90 degree type thing. So for me, I have done it both ways, by the way. So the way I learn is I learn on myself and I learn from the understanding of biomechanics, and I learn like, well, this is actually the most functionally sound and strong way to do it. So that's the way I then teach it. So I've actually tried it the other way because I remember people trying to teach me that, and it felt so frustrating because you're also at the end range kind of your scapula upper rotation. So you're like, I don't have any room to go here. So if you can't lift off, you kind of feel crowded up there. Versus if you lean into the sternum and you kind of hook the scapula on the back, the legs come up and then you just slide, the scapula just slides right up and you've got that room to move. Those are my thoughts on it. What do you think?
I mean, that very last thing you saw me, I pointed at you like, yep. When you start in that protracted position, you're at an end range and there's no wiggle room. So what I love about, and I always do that, I kind of set the scapula in neutral. I always have said this before, right away, that feeling of hooking the scapula onto the ribs in neutral, I can feel the connection between my brain and my scapula. Like those muscles go dink, hello, there we are. And then I don't even think about it once I'm going up. My mind is no longer on my scapulae. I'm thinking about where is my pelvis?
Yeah.
What matters. And then, yes, you're in neutral. So you have this room to upwardly rotate and protract as you come up into that flexion. You're not even thinking about it. And then you still have wiggle room when you're up, those little micro adjustments that you start to learn when your hips are in the air. So to be honest, I'm like you. I don't even think about it. It happens naturally. There's all this room to glide up. And it's, in my opinion, more upward rotation than true protraction. So, I think people do get that because your arms are up in the air. People are like, now what's really happening? It's more, upward, elevation. Right. So yeah, starting in neutral just really gives you such a good footprint to then move. The pelvis can move around that solid base of the scapula. Normally it's the other way around.
Right.
The scapula is moving around the solid base of the pelvis where it is in space. But when you're on your hands, it's just the opposite. So just like we want a stable hip when we're walking forward, we want a stable neutral shoulder girdle that can then just naturally the body move around it.
And that's why, I mean, and I always feel like somebody's going to slap me one day when I'm like, and just kind of pretend like you're like shift on there like you would be walking. But once you've done it enough, it actually does feel like that. There's not a lot of energy expended. And to your point, which is so great, that motor mapping is so solid. You just feel the scapula and then you don't even, I don't ever really have to think about the scapula. I'm just thinking about, oh, let me get the pelvis up.
Yep. Totally. And then it's like, whoop, not far enough. Let me try again. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
And then the little micro adjustments happen. But yeah.
Yep. So there's your answer. Hope that was clear. As always, thank you guys. This was a wonderful set of questions and it's always a pleasure. If you want to write us questions, write me on Instagram. Direct messages are usually the best because our email boxes are so packed with stuff. So Laura.Hyman and KB Williams 99, as you can write Kristen. We love getting your questions and really appreciate you listening. Thank you. I love you.
I love you too. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And as always, we are pulling for you.